Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this digital UK and Ireland FP&A Circle, where today we will be talking about maximizing value creation with FP&A Business Partnering. My name is Hans Gobin. I am the International FP&A Ambassador as well as FP&A Trends Ambassador, and today I will be facilitating this meeting. Just in terms of stats, we've got nearly 300 people joining us today from not only UK and Ireland, but from 34 countries. And as you know, we've got 4 fantastic presentations waiting for you. So without further ado, let's look at, well, this is a list of previous meetings we've had. So please spend some time, read it, and you may pick up quite a lot on our website as well in relation to these meetings. So in terms of agenda, what do we have in store for you today? So I will start with FP&A value creation, business partnering, some stats and some trends, and then we will talk about FP&A business partnering for value creation. What is the model, those 3 pillars? We will go on to look at business-focused finance and a very good example of how to create value within finance. We will look at some top tips in terms of time to make a difference. What are we doing? How can we improve our finance function and create more value? And finally, we'll close off the round of presentation by looking at how technology can enhance FP&A business partner and create value. We will do conclusions and recommendation, and then we will finish off with the Q&A session. So we've got a packed agenda for the next 90 minutes. It is now a great time for me to introduce our speakers and members of the panel. So panelists, please join me on your webcam and go off mute as well, please. Our first speaker for today will be Anthony Rosano, who is Senior Director FP&A at Indeed. He's joining us from Austin in the USA, and today he will share with us his example of the 3 key pillars for value creation. Anthony, great to have you with us today.
Great to be here, Hans.
Thank you very much. Let us now meet our second presenter, who is Andrew Burrows, CEO, CFO, and founder of Supercharged Finance, based in the UK. And today he'll talk about something very dear to him, which is business-focused finance. And he's got a great example of how finance and FP&A can create value. Andrew, great to have you on board with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Brilliant, thank you. Our third speaker is Gemma Davey, Associate Director Performance FP&A at CompareTheMarket.com. She's joining us from UK. She's a FP&A board member, and today she'll talk about how we can make a difference, so time to make a difference. Quite a few top tips as well there coming from Gemma. Gemma, great to have you with us again.
Really great to be back, Hans.
Thank you, Gemma. And finally, we've got Stephen Lockwood, who's VP UK and Ireland from Venner Solutions, based in Camberley in UK, and he will share with us technology, how can technology enhance FP&A business partnering and value creation. Stephen, great to have you on board with us today.
Thanks very much, Hans. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you, Stephen. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got 4 great panelists, lots and lots of insight and great presentation and discussion coming shortly. So please stay with us. Members of the panel, if you can go on mute and switch off your camera, I've got some housekeeping slides to take our audience through today before we start our presentation. Thank you. So, of course, what is FP&A Trends Group? Projects, initiatives. As you know, we are in 27 cities, 16 countries, 4 continents, which was somehow stopped a little bit by COVID, but we're now starting our face-to-face meeting currently with Larissa in the USA. But also we're doing quite a few other things, FP&A education, and you also have FP&A strategic advisory and research. So please look into that. What is the Digital FP&A Board? For those who are have not been with us before, it's a 90 minutes webinar Your participation is via 4 polling questions. So please give us your insight via those polling questions. We need you to participate on them. There is, of course, an interactive Q&A session, so you can ask questions via the chat functionality. You can ask questions now if you so wish, or wait for each presenter to have presented and then direct your question to those presenters. We will answer a few of the questions today, but rest assured all of the questions will be answered. Those we can't answer directly today, we will answer via email directly to yourself. So please do not stop. Whatever questions you have, keep sending them. You can network with us directly via LinkedIn, Twitter, or other mediums. The presentation is available to download right now, or if you wish, leave it, and in a couple of days you will get a copy of the recording and presentation via email to yourself. Finally, when I close the meeting, there is a feedback pop-up survey that comes up. It takes about 30 seconds to kind of fill it in. So please just give us that 30 seconds. Tell us how we did, but also tell us what are the hot topics you would like to hear from us in the future. That would be fantastic if you could do that. So it's a great time for me to introduce our technology partner, which is Venna. Venna Complete Planning combines what you love about Excel with the power of Venna Growth Engine to drive agile, business-wide planning and control. Fantastic platform. So thank you, Venna, for being our technology partner today. Right, I've got a few introductory slides. I don't have that long, so just to kind of get you in the mood and get you introduced to the subject of what we're going to be talking about. And it's a great way to start in terms of sharing with you some stats, which is from FP&A Trends Survey. As you can see there, only 26% of our time is spent on insight generation and driving action. 74% of the time is spent in data collection, validation, information generation. So, you know, are we creating value? Yes or no? But let's now look at what the state-of-the-art organization is doing. I call it state-of-the-art, best in class is probably the right word. It is 80-20. So data collection and data validation is only 20% of the time. So value creation is 80%. We would all like to be there, which is why we've put together this presentation today, is to talk about how can we drive this dial and change and move towards more value creation than data collection. Next slide is much more about partner, FP&A business partner attributes that will help you drive those value. And there's 4 key things highlighted here. It's around collaboration. It's around motivating and educating people around the business, your business partner, as well as your peers. It's about challenging status quo. It's not only about delivering a service anymore. We have to challenge, and by challenging, we help grow the business. And with our analytical mind, help drive business. Of course, you can see it's integrated, strategic, business operational plan. So all the plans in the company is integrated. And you will hear quite a bit about that in our next few slides. And finally, it's all about digitization as well. So how can technology, how can digitization help us create the values? I'll leave you with this very quickly. It's our FP&A Business Partnering maturity model. And here, what I would like to highlight to you guys is what are leading state organization doing? So we saw that 80-20%. What are they doing? You know, in terms of approach, collaboration, business knowledge, really strong holistic knowledge, embracing XP&A, which is extended planning and analysis. How are they influencing the business? They are a key influencer, trusted advisor. What sort of soft skills they have? What sort of analytical skills they have? What sort of technology they are using as well to be able to create value within their organization. Please take some time and go through it. Our panelists will also take quite a few of these and develop in their presentation. So that'll be all from me for now. I think it's a good time for me now to introduce to you again Anthony Rosano, Senior Director FP&A at Indeed, and he'll talk about the 3 pillars of value creation. Over to you, Anthony, whenever you're ready.
Perfect. All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. Again, my name is Anthony Rosano. I'm the Senior Director of FP&A at Indeed. And today I'm going to walk you through a framework for creating value as an FP&A business partner, what I like to call the value creation pillars. So if you go to the next slide, we can walk through that. First, today you'll hear a lot about business partnership in FP&A. I want to give you my definition of what a business partner is, and then I'll walk you through these key pillars that will help stand us up to generate value for the company. So an FP&A business partner is a co-pilot to the business. And as a co-pilot, we have an indispensable role to man the cockpit alongside the business leader at the helm. While the pilot is leading the charge, we're in constant communication, ensuring that we're equally liable to get that precious cargo on board to the final destination safely. Ultimately, we're there to be a strategic influencer for the route ahead. So the way that we can create value is by leaning on 3 key pillars. The first is business empathy. So in FP&A, we're not only an intelligence hub for all things financial, but we also need to feel the problems that our business partners are feeling and equally strive for solutions with them. We need to speak their language and be viewed as part of their team. This is the way that we can create that rapport that is really vital to ensuring that not only are we in the loop, but that we have a seat at the table when crucial decision points are there. The next pillar is analysis and insights. We're curious thinkers, and we're not just providing reports. There's a reason that best-in-class institutions are focusing more on generating insights in FP&A. And that's because it is not just telling the news, it's creating the news by pulling out key trends and ultimately influencing the direction that our business partners are taking. This is also where we can lean on technological solutions that help us harness the power of data to focus on telling really great stories and bringing a point of view with a financial lens to the conversation. And the final pillar is decision support. So we are model builders. We see models as tools to create relationships between inputs and outputs. And with these models, we guide the business through various scenarios to find the optimal outcome that creates the most value. This is where we get a chance to be really creative, and we're exercising not only a strong handle over the numbers, but how they work together to create valuable outcomes. So my next slide, I'm going to walk you through some of the behaviors that we have to exhibit in order to be a modern FP&A business partner. So as I mentioned, we need to evolve our behaviors and reshape the brand that finance may have attached to it. To gain that partnership we covet, we have to focus on the business and make sure that these behaviors reflect that. And in this way, we can really create a strong sense of collaboration with our partners. Where a traditional finance business partner may have aimed more to control through budget adherence and spend management, an FP&A business partner challenges those assumptions. We negotiate with our business partners and ultimately compromise on decisions ahead. Where a traditional finance business partner may have been more in a supporting role, providing reporting or numbers for the business to make decisions, an FP&A business partner needs to translate those reports into analyses, bringing insights and a point of view so that we can influence our partners to make decisions. And finally, where a traditional finance business partner may have monitored key metrics and just kept a pulse on the business, an FP&A business partner has an obligation to use that business empathy to ultimately drive outcomes or drive change along with the business. So in this way, we are not just being value counters, we're being value creators, and that's through these behaviors. So now I want to walk through an example of how to use this in action. We've gone through the theory, so how do we apply it? I work in tech at Indeed.com, and customer lifetime value, or LTV, is a really crucial metric for FP&A. It gives us a firm handle not only on the level of investment that we should be making in sales and marketing to grow the company, but also it gives us a way to understand our key customer behaviors and how we can influence them to drive more value to the firm. It's a really great example of how we can look at both financial and non-financial information and use it as a tool to understand and influence the direction that the business is heading. So let's look at this through the lens of the 3 value creation pillars. First, from a business empathy perspective, we have to ask the right questions that challenge our business partners. So in this context, the question is, are we investing too much or too little in sales and marketing to optimize the value that we are generating for the company? So we're really just setting up a classic ROI example where, how much are we investing today versus the return that we can expect tomorrow? In FP&A, we studied the behavior of our customers, and we broke down the revenue equation into key drivers such as average spend, retention, and churn, and extrapolated that over an expected lifetime. Our team ultimately created a source of truth over the value that we can expect from our customers, and we evangelized this through the company by being totally transparent with the model, the assumptions, and how it works. This is how we can enter the conversation and strategically discuss the trade-offs between growth and efficiency, partnering with the business on what ROI we'd like to achieve versus the opportunity ahead. Moving into the analysis and insights pillar, we can perform analyses on this data in order to glean key insights that will help us create value with our business partners. In this example, as I mentioned, we distilled the LTV equation into drivers like customer churn and retention. Performing time-based cohort analyses, we can identify trends, group outcomes, and tell a story to not only shape what our point of view is, but to educate our business partners on the evolution of our customer behaviors. And this ultimately helps connect the dots between the initiatives that they're taking and the impact that it's having at a more macro level. And finally, through the decision support pillar, we can drive outcomes through scenario modeling. As I mentioned, a consistent conversation we have is the trade-off between growth and efficiency. And through scenario modeling, we can create what I call an investment efficiency frontier to understand the outcome of different investment decisions at a given ROI. So depending on what our investment appetite is, whether it's low, medium, or high, we can understand exactly what the trade-offs are and what value is created. We can also start seeing where we're reaching diminishing returns. So through this example, you can see the ways that we can generate value through empathy, insights, and decision support, or the value creation pillars. There's plenty of more examples out there, and I'm hoping that this framework will help you not only figure out how to focus your work, but how to translate that into value with your business partners. So I want to thank you for listening today, and I'll send it back to you, Hans.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Great presentation here, and thank you for taking us through what your model is, first of all, and what are those key traits of what you see into a business partner, and finally, coming along and sharing a great example with us here. So fantastic. Thank you very much. Let us now look at what our audiences and our FP&A members are doing within their own organization through our first polling question, which is, which of these softer skills that we've just gone through is most important in driving value and business partnering in your organization? If you can vote, please. So it's positively challenging, influencing stakeholders, critical and strategic thinking, or ability to deal with high levels of complexity and ambiguity. What would you say is these softer skills is most important in driving value and business partnering within your organization? Positively challenging, influencing stakeholders, critical and strategic thinking, ability to deal with high level of complexity and ambiguity. I'll give it another 5 seconds, and I'm now going to close it and share the results. And the results are above. 7% is positively challenging, 39% influence, 41 critical and strategic thinking, and 12% high level of complexity and ambiguity. Anthony, any insight from you on this, please?
Sure. This actually is what I was thinking was going to be the outcome. I thought that critical and strategic thinking would likely be the most important soft skill. So glad to see that play out. But I think that goes equally hand in hand with influencing stakeholders. Probably the only way that you can really influence stakeholders is through having a logical thought framework. So I can see how those two go hand in hand. And are kind of leading the pack in terms of the poll results. So not unexpected, but glad to see.
Absolutely, and this is kind of, you know, this is where the end work is in terms of influencing your stakeholders and working critically and thinking strategically to do that as well. So I will 100% agree with you. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for voting, and please keep sending your questions now that you've heard from Anthony. And now let me just hide this and let us move to a very important aspect of our presentation, which is a question from Anthony to the other panelists. So other panelists, if you can join me, please. And the question here is, what role should FP&A play in change management? And if I may go to Andrew first, please.
I think change management is so important, really, for FP&A, and you'll see that when I come to my presentation. It's always been really core in my experience. But if I can leave one tip for in change management, it's really, as FP&A people, be serious about business cases. No lip service, no trying to get sign off for things that really don't work, no trying to help the sponsor or the project manager squeeze things through. Really think, you know, from a business point of view, is this project going to deliver the benefits? Get people on the hook for the benefits, have a benefits realization plan, and that kind of thing. So don't just leave it at the financial model, the cost benefit analysis. Take it further into those practical steps to actually realize benefits from projects.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Andy, there. Thank you. Gemma, your answer, please.
So FP&A involves dealing with so many different stakeholders, and as we saw in the survey, a big part of that is being a big influencer. And I think as an influencer, we need to be really leading by example in terms of the role that we play and having that growth mindset. So it links in back with that critical strategic thinking. And one example is, maybe we can't do something, we reframe to we can't do something yet, and adding the yet in terms of our thinking onto sentences.
Fantastic, thank you for that. And finally, Stephen. Stephen, you're on mute, by the way. Okay, all right. We'll come back to you in a bit, Stephen. So thank you very much. We'll catch up with you in a bit. Let us now move on to our next session, which is, of course, business-focused finance. So ladies and gentlemen, if you can turn your webcam off, and let's listen from Andrew, who is CEO, CFO, founder of Supercharge Finance, and he will take us through what he means by business-focused finance and his example. So over to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Hans. Now, those of you who know me, who've heard me before, probably know that I now prefer to talk about business-focused finance rather than business partnering. The mindset, skills, habits, and behaviors of business-focused finance are what enable everybody in finance to add value. So it doesn't just apply to FP&A. And I like that as a broader approach to help everyone in finance add value. So business-focused finance centers around a core question: how can I help the business? how does my role help the business? How can I use my experience, skills, knowledge, network, etc., to help the business? So when I come to talk about FP&A business partnering, my approach is simply to start by asking how FP&A business partnering can help the business. And what I wanted to do is illustrate that by sharing a story from my own experience that I don't think I've shared anywhere else. So if you've heard me before, you'll probably be interested in hearing something new. And it comes from near the beginning of my finance career, about 25 years ago. And I have to go back to my first job outside of public practice after I qualified as a chartered accountant. I was a finance manager in a division of Barclays Bank called TransPay. And TransPay was one of the more physical businesses within Barclays because we used to process packages of physical banknotes and travelers' checks. And one of the first things I got involved in when I joined was unit costing analysis. I had to work out which costs should be included and which volumes to work with to come up with a cost per order. Pretty standard kind of thing in FP&A, don't you think? Except as a finance manager, I also had to manage AP and accounts receivable, settlements, reconciliations, and reporting because I managed everything in finance. But this piece of work was really important. And the importance of the cost per order analysis was that it would first enable us to forecast costs and resource requirements more confidently, because we were hoping to grow and take on outsourced clients. But second, given that we were hoping to take on these new clients, it would help us to price the new business more effectively and accurately. But then third, it would help us to baseline for an operational automation project. We were hoping to make the operation more efficient, so we needed a baseline of unit cost to set the benefit, to calculate the benefits against. So that's a brief overview, but just to call out what I was doing at that stage, it was decision support. I was delivering financial analysis that would enable the business to make good decisions about resourcing, investment, customer acquisition, and in so doing, it was helping the business to increase its value. So why do I talk about it as an example of FP&A business partnering? Well, because my work was helping the automation project manager and the operations director in the first instance in building the business case and their resourcing model, I was partnering with them by providing the financial analysis they needed to progress with the strategic objectives of the business in their areas. And one of the first points I wanted to make is that in order to build that financial model, I had to understand the operational process in order to demonstrate how it drove cost. So I had to approach it as a collaborative piece of work. I would ask questions about operational processes, and I'd share my workings and ask for feedback and confirmation. And together as a team, we knocked the model into shape. And I guess I saw it at the time, even then, as an obvious approach. So I don't necessarily see it as particularly remarkable. But, over the years, I've lost count of the number of FP&A people I've met who would try and do that as a kind of desktop exercise. They get a request in, like on an email, they fire up a spreadsheet, open a new workbook, crunch the numbers, and email back a financial model to whoever asked. And the thing with that is that quality ends up being low. You don't build relationships, you stick with this arm's length relationship, and it's quite transactional. So that's my first point. Treat it as a team effort. And if you start with a team effort, you can move further into some interesting territory. So let me move on to the next slide. So in my collaboration, I had to talk then with the marketing director, and he was interested in the analysis because the project would enable his customer acquisition strategy. And it turned out that the model only needed a few tweaks to become a pricing model, which we batted backwards and forwards as he met the different potential customers. And over the course of time, the strategy turned from establishing this outsourced capability of getting new customers to forming a joint venture with a competitor, and then to selling the business to a competitor. And at each stage, I was the one that understood the financial dynamics and provided the modeling. And because I was being collaborative with people in marketing and customer services and operations. I got to meet the potential partners and purchasers, and I got to compare financial models with them. And I got to then sit in legal meetings and project meetings to make sure that the modeling was correctly reflected in the legal agreement, and then to model any agreed changes. So that collaborative approach got me into wider and wider conversations. So that's where FP&A business partnering can take you. But I didn't just leave it there, because this was a team effort and we were working towards common goals. And remember, I was in charge of the whole of finance, not just working in FP&A. So when it came to selling the business, I had to think about these practical things we'd have to do to make the transition successful. And that meant implementing a new ERP system, new payment systems, new accounting processes, new reports, new balance sheet controls, new everything. And those things linked to other processes across the whole of the business. No other department was impacted so greatly. And so I started asking more questions. I got into project meetings, and whatever came into my head, whatever question that I wanted to know the answer to, I just asked it. And 90% of the time, no one in the room knew the answer. So guess who took the action to go away and find out? And that took me far and wide, talking to all sorts of different people across the bank, operations, treasury, IT. And of course, at the same time, I had a team to lead through the transition, involving them as much as I could confidentially allow them, allaying their fears, keeping them informed. And then eventually, because of my knowledge of the business, from strategy to the nitty-gritty financial processes, and because of my leadership of the team, I was appointed as finance director by the new owner. And I was only 29 years old at the time. And this isn't me bragging, by the way. What I'm trying to show you really is how FP&A business partnering, even what you think of as a simple financial modeling job, can lead to many great opportunities if you start with the mindset, habits, skills, and behaviors of business-focused finance. And I'll summarize those on the next slide. So first of all, be curious. Come up with questions and find someone who can show you the answers. Show as well as tell. Take a tour of the operations to visualize what happens. Ask questions, sometimes just for interest, and don't be afraid of asking stupid questions. You'll find that 95% of the time, your questions are not as stupid as you actually fear. Secondly, be collaborative. This is actually probably the first primary thing. Don't see non-finance people as customers or even as business partners. People are people, and you're all in the business together with common goals. So share what you're doing and then list anyone you need to help, whether they're in finance or not. Thirdly, get out of your box, which is my way of saying avoid the silo mentality. Don't just think I'm in FP&A, so I've got to stick with the analysis. Anyone can ask good questions that help the business move forward. So if you think about something, talk about it and get other people involved if they can help. And to sum up, finally, just help the business. Business-focused finance isn't just about decision support. It's not just about FP&A. FP&A business partnering may start with decision support analysis, and it may start with getting an understanding of value drivers for forecasting. But with a business-focused finance mindset and with developing the right skills, habits, and behaviors, you can get involved in the actual execution of those decisions and actually see them through to actual fruition. And that makes for a very rewarding job. Back to you, Hans.
Thank you very much, Andy. Fantastic presentation. I love your 3C approach: curiosity, collaboration, and contribution. And the top tips you've kind of given us there: help the business, help yourself, really, at the end of the day. So thank you very much for that. Let us now quickly move on and look at what our audiences and our FP&A members are doing within their own organization as far as these are concerned by our next polling question. What role should FP&A play? Where do you think FP&A are most likely to add value in your organization. So enabling an execution of business strategy, performance management, budget and forecast management, and finally data and system management. If you can vote, please. The 4 options are enabling an execution of business strategy, performance management, budget and forecast management, data and system management. I'll give it another 5 seconds. So where do you think FP&A are most likely to add value in your organization? I'm now going to close the vote and share the results. 60% have said enabling an execution of business strategy, 19% performance management, 21% budget and forecast management, 0% data and system management. Amazing. Andy, any insight from you on what we're seeing here, please?
I think it's expected, really, but the thing I really draw attention to, especially from my own experience and what I was trying to draw out, was getting involved in execution of business strategy. You can also get in there. It's not just about decision support, it's about decision implementation as well. But also the other thing I'd observe is that the starting point for that, if the biggest value is what you can add in execution and enabling business strategy, you can enter that from any point from the other 3 points on that list. You can, with just the way that you do it.
Absolutely, a great point there from you, Andy. And what's amazing there is that 0% in data and system management. And guess where we spend most of our time is in data. So, mining data, trying to make sense of it and everything else. So that's amazing. Thank you very much for that, ladies and gentlemen, for voting. And of course, again, I'll remind you, please keep sending your questions. Let us now hide this and look at the question that Andy's got for the other panelists, which is, so before that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me on the webcam. What are your top tips for FP&A teams to work collaboratively with the business? So we've heard from Andy, let's hear from the others now. Anthony, how do you work collaboratively? What are your top tips?
So I think a lot of this will echo what Andy mentioned, but I think the biggest tip is to find common ground with our business partners. Whether we like it or not, or the other way around, we're kind of outsiders until we prove that we're part of the team. And the best way to do that is to find the common space versus what kind of sets us apart, so that we can have those conversations and put yourself out there and ask those questions so that you can kind of bring more cohesion and collaboration. So that's my top tip, is to find common ground.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Gemma, your tips, please.
I think firstly, I'd say be open-minded. Secondly, be a sponge. So really listen. Ask how you can help, and have a voice and an opinion. And as Andy said, not just on the finance things, but beyond.
Thank you very much. Quite a few there, and absolutely on point as well. Thank you, Gemma. Let us go to Stephen now. Stephen? We seem to have some problem with Stephen. I think you may have to log off and log back in, Stephen. So we'll skip that for now, and let us go and listen to our next session. So ladies and gentlemen, if you can turn your webcam off, we go and listen to Gemma, who is going to talk about time to make a difference. And again, lots more top tips coming from Gemma. Gemma, so over to you.
Thank you, Hans. So, hi, I'm Gemma Davey, and my purpose is all around making a difference to my stakeholders and inspiring others to be at their best. So when I read the 2021 FP&A Trends Survey, it was one of those mixed emotion moments when I read that only 12.5% of organisations are spending 40% of their time in value-adding activities. And on the one hand, I felt a sense of relief that as an organisation, we weren't alone. And actually, the majority of us were in the same position. But on the other hand, if I'm honest, I felt a bit ashamed that FP&A, a function that I felt so proud to put my name to, was not creating the value it should be. And definitely my own team weren't operating in the space it needed to get to our 2025 finance strategy, which is all around creating value. And I thought, if my team aren't operating in that space, how do we, as an FP&A community, empower and execute and get really laser focused on moving that 12.5% dial up? And how do we enable more time to be spent on those value creating activities, such as effective business partnering? So today I'm going to share with you 5 tips on how to create that space. These are 5 tips that are all really practical examples that myself and my team have implemented over the last 6 months. So tip number 1 is around time study. So a few months back, we took part in a time study trial. So it was a 4-week period, and it really got us to understand where we were spending our time. And the results were shocking, and they were worse than I originally thought. And we were spending less than 15% of our time business partnering. And I thought, how could we call ourselves partners and value adding when we were only doing it less than 1 day a week? But the fact is, this was data driven, and actually it allowed us to understand what was taking our time, and that was weekly forecasting and PowerPoint churn. And this leads to my top tip number 2, which is challenge the churn. So our time study showed us that 25% of our time was being spent on weekly forecasting. So what would happen if we went from weekly forecasting to bi-weekly? Our main concern was that this would impair our forecasting accuracy. So we used data to show that actually we were no more accurate when we did this weekly. And our forecasting was a bit of a yo-yo. And so when I took the proposal to the CFO to change this cadence, it wasn't that difficult conversation. And the combination of the time study and the forecasting accuracy was a real powerful data-driven analytic. And actually that's what we ended up doing. So tip number 3 was a tool we learned on a virtual business partnering course, and it's called the RAG review. And we're all familiar with RAG, and the goal here is to, how do we get our commentary to be more meaningful and more value adding? And I'm going to take you through a really simple example, really dumbed down example to illustrate the point. So with RAG, we take an extract of our current commentary, and we start with red. We highlight anything that is not adding any value in addition to the charts and the tables. So it could be text that's replicating what's in the chart or the table, and it's just explaining the what. We highlight this red. Anything that is explaining a why, we would highlight amber. And anything that is a so what or a now what is green. And these are your actionable insights. So this will really allow you to give you an overview on the balance of your commentary. So if 2/3 of your page is red, it's questionable that it's actually adding value. So we use this to declutter our commentary. It's a work in progress, but we've made a start. And it doesn't mean that we've got 0 red, it's just red in moderation. And it also helps us to ensure that we've covered the why and we've covered the so what, and that's where we add value. Okay, tip number 4, prioritizing partnerships. So how do I make partnering a priority? Now, a few months ago, a colleague of mine said to me, Gemma, your diary is full of meetings. When do you get time to do any thinking or prepping? And it was a bit of a hallelujah moment, and I knew I'd got to change. So now I block out partner prep time, and I call these meetings with myself. And this gives me time to really focus on what I want to get out with the business partner call. What do I need to take away from that? Do I need someone to do something, decide something, agree to take an action. And it sounds pretty simple, but the fact is a lot of us don't do it. And a runner doesn't do a race without training. A singer doesn't go on stage without warming up their voice. So it could be as little as 20 minutes and it will make you more effective. So I tend to do this at the start of the day. I spend 15 minutes and it really keeps me focused and it sets me up to succeed. Okay, my final tip. This is my favourite Covey habit, and that's sharpen the saw. So I read recently that nowadays our skills have a lifespan of only 5 years. So if we stood still, and in 5 years' time, our peers will have overtaken us. So we need to make sure we stay fresh and stay relevant. And actually, you listening today is a great first step. So in lockdown, I discovered podcasts and they've changed my life, particularly on subjects of self-awareness, team effectiveness, really empowering and getting the most out of my people. And they're great things to do in what I call dead time. So maybe taking a dog for a walk, getting some fresh air at lunch, on the commute. So take weekly actions to sharpen your own saw. Okay, so I've finished with my tips. Now I'm going to give you 5 ideas to action. So on my next slide, so on action 1 is set up a 4-week time log with your team. Work out those suggested buckets of time, so maybe forecasting, reporting, business partnering, team meetings. Action 2, pick a cadence that's taking a lot of your team's time and work out how much time it's costing you versus the value it's giving you. And it's a super powerful way. You can do this through data, do a trial period with the lower cadence and see how you get on. Okay, action 3, pick some commentary from your reporting pack and do that RAG review. The 4th action, get those meetings with yourself in the diary. Aim for 10-20 minutes 3 times a week as a starter if your diary's rammed. And maybe look at cutting down some minutes that are maybe 30 minutes to 15 or an hour to 40. Because have you noticed when you put a 30-minute meeting in, you end up taking all that time? My 5th action is listen to podcasts. And my favourite one at the moment is The Squiggly Career by Amazing If. Over to you, Hans.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Great tips there. I really like, challenging the churn. How many of us really do go back and challenge what we're doing, even looking at, how long a process is taking, whether or not there is any value add in there. So thank you very much. And thank you for all the tips and the ideas for action as well. The Squiggly Careers is just fantastic. Thank you for that. Let us quickly now listen to what our audience and our members are doing as far as exactly your tips is concerned, Gemma. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you can vote on this, please. Which of the following will bring the quickest win across your organization in terms of value creation? Challenging the churn around budget, forecast, reporting, or anything else? A RAG review in all the processes that you can do. Prioritizing business partnering. What about training? If you can vote, please. Which of the following will bring the quickest win across your organizations in terms of value creation? Challenging the churn, RAG review, prioritizing business partnering, and finally training. So I'll give it another few seconds and I am now going to close it and reveal what the result is. So 39% is talking about challenging the churn. Amazingly, 15% RAG review, 41% prioritizing business partnering, and 5% on training. Gemma, any insight from you here? Anything you would like to add?
I think that speaks itself, actually, the challenging the churn, about how much time we're actually spending on the churn itself. And I think in terms of the training, I think as individuals, we end up putting ourselves last in our own training and sharpening the saw. So that probably speaks to itself in terms of why people haven't picked that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Let me now quickly hide this and let us go back to our question that Gemma has for the other panelists. So panelists, if you'd like to join us again, please, on your webcam. And the question is, what have you done differently within your own organization to move that dial towards increased value creation in your organization? Anthony, if I can start with yourself, please.
Sure. So I would say, it's very easy for us to focus on outcomes when we're working with our business partners and trying to find value. I think one thing that we can do differently is to focus more on the process, and that helps us ask questions, business partner more deeply, and through that co-creation, we can collaborate and come to outcomes that we maybe weren't thinking of initially. This is a more innovative approach to finding value creation, and I think that's one way to think about this a little bit differently.
Great point there. Thank you very much, Anthony. Andrew?
I guess one of the ways that I was always a bit different when I worked in sort of business partnering was I used to ask why a lot, both to learn and to challenge. It's like I always try to link back to business performance and strategy. It's like, why are you wanting to do this project? Why are you proposing this? Why do you do it this way? And how does that help performance? How does that link with strategy? Because I guess at the end of the day, if it's if what people are doing is not helping with the strategy and not helping with performance, then why are they doing it? So I suppose that's kind of my tip would be try to ask why and start with why.
Yeah, well, I suppose question everything really, why the existence of whatever you're doing and what is the value it's adding. Absolutely spot on there. Thank you very much, Andrew. Stephen?
Can you hear me, Hans?
Fantastic. We've got you back.
Back in the game. Okay. Well, it is actually a nice segue into obviously the presentation that I'm about to walk through now. But I think, listening to some of the earlier comments, what we've done differently is change a lot of our mindset. We've looked at finance as a conduit and really tried to, collaborate more openly rather than, just going up and down and going through the standard course. But I think it leads on to what I'm going to talk about in a minute. But yeah, we've thought differently. I think that's the bottom line.
Absolutely. Thinking outside of the box. One of our speakers went through that as well. So fantastic. Thank you all. Thank you very much for the insight and answering those questions. Let us now move on to our last presentation for today, which is around technology. And to do that, we have Stephen Lockwood, who is VP UK and Ireland from Venna. Stephen, ready when you are? Over to you.
Thank you, Hans. And yes, hopefully we'll have no more issues with audio. So obviously you've seen my bio. So I think just interesting to introduce Venna a little bit here and why we're here to talk about business partnering. We're a planning and analysis tool that uses Microsoft Excel as our user interface, or indeed the window on the data. We're 10 years old, got 1,000+ clients. We typically come out of FP&A use cases. However, because we have that Excel layer, we work across an organization. And that's why one of our core themes is actually business partnering. So moving on to look at, the theme that we have around today's topic in the next slide is a quote from Bill Gates, which obviously is not just because we're Microsoft, but we're looking at the theme of tech supporting that primary goal. And just going back to one of the comments that we had in the earlier sort of surveys where we were looking at 0% seeing business partnering as adding value to the data or the tools. That's absolutely correct, because it shouldn't. Technology should solve the problem. It should not be part of the problem. And actually, when we look at the quote that came in the next slide from one of our clients, that's Citizens Advice. That's a not-for-profit charity advising the UK populace on what to make the right decisions, what's legally right and what's accurate. Josh there talks very much about the culture, the processes, the people being almost as important, if not more important than what is finance transformation and digital and technological change. So that's really the theme of what we're here to talk about today. And if we move to the next slide here, what we see is something that frames this problem and why we are focusing on this as one of our key themes. This was an extract taken out of an article by Raconteur in the Sunday Times recently of a CFO extract. And the top item there that was focused on by all CFOs surveyed, 50% of them saw establishing financial business partnering as really what they need to be looking at. And that's not surprising, as we'll talk about that in a minute. Very closely followed by models and scenarios for planning and forecasting. So I think what we see here is why FP&A is in a really good spot to talk about business partnering. And it is obviously top of thought. There's obviously lots of other areas that CFOs are concerned about here, but to see that one top and center is really super important. And I think when we look at the next slide, what we're trying to illustrate here is that when we go beyond the Office of Finance, we need to make sure that the tools we're using, as I said, don't become part of the problem. If people don't like using something, they typically won't use it. I use the analogy here of mushrooms. I hate them. My wife is often trying to make me eat them in different forms, and it doesn't matter how many times I'm asked to eat them or say asked. I don't eat them because I don't like them. Now, another thing that we refer back to here is Anthony's presentation about business empathy and really understanding what your business wants and your employees want. And that's one of his 3 pillars. I think that's really super important here, because obviously what we see is tools that don't allow flexibility can cause us to work outside of the process, which gives that, issues in Excel popping up left, right and center, and different tools being used to solve a problem, which gives different numbers which we can't have, specifically when we're making decisions based on them, or if we're sharing those with the outside world. Now, where we look at our final point, what we're looking at is how FP&A can really be that conduit. They really bring the initiatives together. They can ensure that we're not having that sort of shadow finance popping up, and really they lead the initiative rather than being somebody that inhibits the initiative. Which moves on to our next slide, which is, and again, Gemma spoke about this in her presentation, 40% finance time in value-added activity. Now we're seeing that in non-value-added activity, and we're seeing that very much in what we're surveying. About 60 to 70% of everybody's time is spent on basic data collection. So let's look at where technology can help there. The first thing is to automate the mundane, remove a lot of the processes that we're doing, which can simply be automated. That's the first thing. The second thing, and the one we're focusing on here, with business partnering, how we can facilitate that use case, how we aren't sharing documents left, right and center, how we're using a technology that removes the need to be a technologist and allows us to focus on the issues itself. We term it as cognitive comfort in our world. And really, as I said, we're not here to talk about technology. We're talking about how business partnering can facilitate what we're trying to achieve. These next 2 slides really make you think more about why it's important to focus on what we're going to be talking about, Hans. So next slide very much is around the change that we've experienced in the last couple of years. In the last 2 years, we've had 7 years worth of change. Zoom, Chime, GoToMeeting, Teams, whether they work or not is one thing. But the fact that we've got so many coming into the forum now means that we're having to deal with lots of different things. And looking at the next slide, what it very much shows here is that we are seeing, Hans, that 43% of workers switching between different tools. Basically, our brains are not designed to cope with all this amount of change. Technology is a recent invention. When we look at how we've moved online and we've moved hybrid, that is even more recent still. And we really, we go back all the way back in the day to when, we were invented as human beings. It was all about communication and collaboration. So what we're looking at here is focusing on
Stephen,
go on. Yeah?
Yeah, no,
if we can move to the next, I'm back.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Next slide, please, Hans. This is Venna. So this was us pre-COVID. You can see that because there aren't as many of us. We've grown significantly, and we're all now standing very close together. But our challenge on the next slide, Hans, was very much looking towards the problem that we had. And our problem that we had was one where we're a high growth company. We've got lots of top down and top and bottom budgeting. Essentially, we're on a leadership course, and the middle layer and senior layer of leaders, not the C level, we're talking about the issues, and we weren't able to solve them. Everybody was essentially moaning, having an issue with about, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. So we were doing the right things, but we weren't actually collaborating. Our VP Finance, Manira, said, well, why don't we look at this? And if everybody's got the same problems, how do we basically work across the units to change that problem priority? So maybe if I change some of my headcount requirements to later in the year, then we can bring some other requirements in. And that change was led by our finance function. And that's what we believe, is a technology which supports this, but it has to be the units that drive it, led by finance. And going back to the open mindset, growth mindset, challenging, is really how we as finance people can get to that. So when we form on the last slide here, Hans, what we really want to look at is how we get to where we want to get to. And for us, it's very much about gaining trust. It's very much around being open, and it's very much around using the right technology that works for the users, not the business. As I said, for us, we wanted to make sure that our technology was just, you didn't know that you were using it, which meant that you didn't have to worry about it, and you could really focus on the problem rather than the issue. Thank you, Hans.
Fantastic. Thank you very much there, Stephen. Great presentation. And of course, you've also shared with us technology, but also shared with us how finance and FP&A business partnering is key in delivering technology as well as value creation there. So thank you very much for that. Let us now quickly move on and look at the polling question that we've got from yourself, which is going to be launched right now. And it's about what is the most effective process for unlocking value creation in your organization? Culture, consistent and continuous planning, using a planning and forecasting system for XP&A, extended planning and analysis, breaking down departmental silos, as we've seen, or reporting. What is the most effective process for unlocking value creation in your organization? Culture, consistent and continuous planning, using a planning and forecasting system for XP&A, breaking down departmental silos, and finally, reporting. If you can vote, please, I'll give it another 5-10 seconds before we close this one. So culture, consistent planning, planning system for XP&A business partnering, breaking down silos, and then reporting. I'm now going to close this and share the results with our team. So 50% said culture, amazingly. 3% consistent and continuous planning. 16% using a planning system for XP&A business partnering. 31% breaking down departmental silos. Nobody's concerned about reporting. So any insight from you, Stephen?
Other than I'm delighted. I think that's a great answer. I was hoping to see that. I mean, we've run surveys ourselves to see which one comes out on top and what's more important. I'm impressed to see culture as being so high, but certainly those two I see as being fundamental. We see as being fundamental to that business partnering strategy and process. The other three really are processes, and I don't think when we're going to answer the challenges of the business and why we're doing this business partnering is because we want to outthink the competition. We want to leapfrog the competition. We want to make sure we stay ahead. It's only when working together that we do that. And yeah, culture of the organisation is absolutely tantamount. And breaking down those silos is really important. So I'm delighted, actually, Hans. What about you?
Yeah, no, absolutely spot on. I think, a lot of what Gemma and the other panelists have spoken about is all about breaking down those culture and the different ways of doing things from top down. And of course, collaboration has been a key theme for everyone today. So thank you for the insight there, Stephen. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for voting. Let me hide this very quickly and let us go on to our question from Stephen to the other members of the panel. So panelists, if you can join us, please, and let's go and look at how technology enhances value creation within your own organization. So your own example there, please. If we may start with Anthony, please. Anthony?
Great. So the way that we use technology to enhance value creation is through that discovery process. If we're going to come to the table with key insights and trends, we need to, use technology to really tell that story and to pull that information a lot faster. You saw in my presentation the example of going through churn and retention. If we didn't have technological sources to actually visualize that and to see that, we wouldn't be able to have those conversations. So those are the ways that we use technology to enhance value creation.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Thank you. Can we go to Andrew, please?
Sure. I mean, I guess I look at value creation through technology in simplistic terms. Just look back to when we started using technology for accounting and reporting, and had things like Excel come in, and it just meant we exploded in terms of the amount we could do, the flexibility that we had, the speed that we could do it, but also the versatility and immediacy of the communication. So all those things contribute to being able to add value more effectively.
Absolutely, spot on there. Thank you, Andrew. Gemma?
Yeah, this is very much a work in progress in our organisation. In terms of how it's helped so far, it's around having one version of the truth in terms of the data points, and yeah, the value that comes from that, rather than the debates around where data has come from.
Fantastic, great point there. I mean, I'm a big advocate of one source of the truth, but as we go through organization, we always struggle with that. So thank you very much, Gemma. And finally, to just round it up, Stephen, anything from yourself?
Yeah, and thanks. And we've got a great panel here today, so it's probably a good job I was muted for half the time so everybody could speak. I think that for me, the key element here is that value creation bit. The how, what we've done in 22 years in the business is a lot. I think we've forgotten that why are we putting technology in? Is to create value, not to form a process or control what we're doing. We need to do that in certain areas, but ultimately we have a process in place to allow us to create value in another area. And so making sure that the how is very much around creation, and what is the end goal. If we lose the end goal, then I think we're all done for, really. But I think for us, we use our own technology. We're a great use case. We use it for all sorts of different areas. And I've got a million different customer stories that you'll tell me off for telling, but about how different organisations use it, for counting light bulbs in a hotelier, to obviously planning workforce and various other things like that. But yeah, I think it's pervasive. Anyway, sorry, I'll stop talking, Hans.
Yeah, no, absolutely. To all of your points, of course, technology is a massive enabler, and the only way you will see that, you kind of start to save time and move the dial from 20/80 to 80/20 is by looking at the processes that you do, looking at how your data is brought together, and then looking at using some sort of a tool to do your planning where you're not spending weeks and months on doing everything paper-based, Excel-based, or whatever, not ditching Excel at all, but wherever you can save time, that's where value is, and then you move on to go and create value in terms of decision making. So thank you very much, all of you, for the answers. Let us now just stay on the camera, because we're coming to our key takeaways session. But before that, let me just remind the audience that please keep sending your question. We've got lots of questions coming in. We will answer a few of them today because of time. The rest of them we will answer via email to yourself. So please keep sending them till the end. And of course, after this session is when our exciting Q&A session comes into place. But now we're going to do some conclusion, and I will look forward to asking the panelists to spend a minute or two talking about their key conclusion from their presentation. I've got a couple listed out here. It's either these two or anything you would like to share again, please. So if I may go to Anthony, please. Anthony, what will be your key takeaway you want to remind our audience again?
So I would say my key takeaway is to remember that as an FP&A business partner, you really are the co-pilot to the business. You're there with them, you're on the journey, and you're there to be a strategic influencer to the route ahead. And you know, you can leverage the value creation pillars that I mentioned. And I think that, you know, while business empathy is really important to feeling those problems that the business is feeling, you do have to equally challenge them. You know, just feeling those problems doesn't mean you are you know, being soft. You have to push back and make sure that ultimately you're adding value, and value can come through that. So those would be my key takeaways in strong business partnership and adding value to the company.
Thank you very much, Anthony. If we go to Andrew now, please. Andrew, what will your key takeaways be?
I think I just want to emphasize the point about being collaborative and seeing yourself as part of the team, on the same side, not an us and them, just, you know, we're all in it together to help the business perform better. I had something else I wanted to say, but I've forgotten it. It's really all around that collaboration and being part of the team.
Fantastic. Thank you very much there. Gemma, if we come to you, your key takeaways, please.
Yeah, so my takeaway is really take control of your business partnering time, and that classic saying of making time will save you time, to enable business partnering. So yeah, challenge, stay relevant, sharpen that saw.
Fantastic. Love that little phrase, sharpen the saw. Of course, you know, as you mentioned, we go irrelevant very, very quickly if we don't keep up to date with things. So thank you for that. And finally, Stephen.
Yeah, so I think I'm not going to read those. I agree with those. I'm going to tell a personal story because I get challenged by this. I think we've got different generations. We're working from a hybrid. We're working in different ways. We've gone through a lot of change, and I think the soft skills that we've spoken about through here, you know, Andy's empathy, and with collaboration with Andy, and, you know, all these various other things. I bought myself a book recently on active listening, because I think that one of the things we need to look at is, you know, how do we understand each other? Back to that communication piece. You know, I'm still struggling at times across our organisation to understand, you know, how do we work together? So I think that if we're going to make this work, you know, back to your point, Hans, we have to think outside the box a little bit and push the boundaries ourselves to say, what can I do to inspire confidence, to build trust, and to gain people's empathy for me and what we're trying to achieve. So yeah, I agree completely with what's written on the screen, but, you know, think to some new skill sets that we're going to need to take if we can get, you know, if we're going to get FP&A to be the lead, which we have to be, if we're going to get FP&A to really be the lead in making the change in the business.
Fantastic. Great key takeaway there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, panelists, for all your key takeaways. Let us now move to our Q&A session, which is going to start now. But of course, as I reminded you guys again, please keep sending them even till the end of the session, because we will try and answer the one we can't answer today live via email to yourself. So please carry on sending them. Our first question today goes to Anthony. Anthony, you talked extensively about, you know, the key attributes for those three key pillars that you shared with us. How we find that it is quite difficult to develop softer skills, and most of those are very much softer skills. How do you develop them? How do you train your staff around the softer skills within your organization? What can we learn from yourself?
That's a really great question. I would say that it's first kind of providing the vision and providing this framework or whatever framework works for your organization, making sure that people know kind of where they stand and what's expected and what type of culture as that the poll suggested is kind of a really important factor in this. What type of culture you're trying to cultivate is super important and step one. And then step two is kind of creating a really safe space for asking questions so that they can try try some things out before kind of testing on the business. So in my weekly staff meetings, I always mention that this is a safe space for feedback in both directions. I try to provide feedback, and also I welcome feedback from my team so that we can get comfortable with asking those questions in an area where there's a safety net, so that when then they are out with the business, it's not the first time they've tried it or the first time they've worked on their soft skills. So I would say culture, cultivating the culture, and then providing a safe space for practice are two really good ways to develop those softer skills with business partnership.
Yeah, and there's always that empowering piece where, and not just empowering, but just taking junior team members to meetings where they can listen, understand, and look at different interaction between the senior team as well as anything else. So that's another good one to add. Thank you very much there, Anthony. Great answers. Thank you. If we now go to Andrew, please. Andrew, you shared a great example there, and it really worked well in your instance. It may have been a smaller company where that example worked. How would you work the same sort of model with a much larger company where things are, bigger, etc.? Any tips from you?
I think take the same approach. I mean, I can't say it was a particularly small part of Barclays. I mean, we were still talking about millions in our P&L and balance sheet. In fact, I think because we were working on foreign exchange, we often got over the billion mark in terms of revenue. But I had a team of 16 people at the time, so it's a sizable finance team, and I think it's the approach that matters. It's the collaborative approach that matters, and using the kind of emotional intelligence to really get alongside people, like with the empathy that Anthony was talking about earlier, and the active listening that Stephen was talking about. That's what it's all about, and you'll find yourself with those kind of with that kind of emotional intelligence and that kind of soft skills, you will find yourself, whatever you do, whether it's crunching invoices through the AP system or whether it's financial modeling or doing system and data, if you do it with that collaborative approach, that, what am I doing to help the business? Can I help the business more? Who do I need to talk to help the business more? If you do everything you do with that kind of mindset and mentality, and you build connections, then you can go further than you ever thought possible. I think that's the fundamental thing, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I think probably heard it wrong from you or misinterpreted your example. But I think in terms of the way to think about it, it's a change in mindset completely. It's being curious, being able to challenge is what you're saying. Absolutely. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Let us now go to Gemma very quickly. So again, all your 5 tips there, Gemma, they were fantastic. But as an example, we always strap for time within our company, and I think that's the case for everybody else. Is how do we even convince our staff to find the time to kind of sit back and think and put these processes, go and challenge, go and look at the churn of processes and activity. It would be good to hear from you as to how you put these motion into action, for example, even though we don't tend to have time to even think about these things.
I think in terms of winning people over, in terms of hearts and minds, I think as finance people, we're very data driven. So using data to maybe convince people around where you're spending your time. I think leading by example, something really passionate about. So if people see me really thinking about challenging my own time, again, it's that kind of flywheel effect. So I've shared, we call them finance huddles in terms of our big team meetings. I've shared how we go about doing that and how we've done that, but I've also then my team have gone and talked about that and what they've done. So we're kind of that ripple effect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, it's culture, it's mindset again in terms of, you know, leading by example, but also now then creating that space, that mindset to kind of put that into practice as well. So thank you very much for that. Our next question goes to Steve. Steve, great presentation. We are quite a small company. And we don't have any of these major things that you know, we've looked at, we've heard from all the different panelists being spoken about in terms of tools, etc. How do we go about adopting a tool and we can see the real value of adoption there? What are our next steps?
In terms of adoption, I think it's like the value creation in my mind. You start with the goal, where do you want to get to, and you work your way back. I mean, from a practical level with tooling, you know, we're very hands-on and very easy to operate. That's from a vendor point of view. I think from a people point of view, you have to look at how is this going to impact their lives and how are we going to make sure that they are going to be able to take that technology on board. I want to just nip back to what Anthony said earlier about his sort of opening a meeting with a safe space. When Venner has grown, it's doubled in size probably in about the last 12 months in terms of our UK team, because we're growing at a huge pace. When we had all our sort of contracts team together, the first thing we did was have a session on psychological safety and to really make sure that everybody could air what they wanted to do together. Now, I very much believe that in order for any technology project to succeed, you need to have sponsorship, you need to have very clearly defined, you know, lines of what we're going to achieve, by when, you know, on time and on budget and all those sorts of things. But I think in the modern world in which we are, which has changed over the last, even in the last 5 years, I've noticed a change in organizations. We need to make sure that we bring people on that journey with us. So yeah, you know, there are lots of great technologies in the FP&A space and sort of globally across anything that you can have. So the process to get from A to B is pretty nailed on now. That's why I think when we look at what technology is going to make most difference for you know, if I was talking to you, Hans, you know, looking to buy something in this area, what's the most unique thing that you can gain from this that our technology, whatever it is going to fulfill for your company? How is it going to really answer the questions, and can people live with it long term? Is it always going to be around? Is it going to be cumbersome? So I think it's gone beyond, when we're looking at deployment, you know, irrespective of the size of the organization, you really need to look at why you're doing this in the first place. How can you bring people on that journey with you, albeit you're sponsoring it, and then making sure that people are heard all the way through the process. I hope that answers it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I really like your point on your slide about it's not about being a police, you know, or monitoring people. It's about bringing everybody on that journey and making sure it works for everyone, which is again where the kind of FP&A sort of thing comes along really well. And funnily enough, I've got one question. We've got a few minutes remaining. I've got one very quick question to ask the whole panel here, which is interesting. Somebody's asked that they spend a lot of time in their budgeting, and it takes them forever. It takes them months to do their budgeting. And they would like to know from the panelists as to what are they doing? What are you guys doing so that, you know, you increasing that value and reducing the amount of time that you spend? So anything you could share around your budgeting process, how short it is, how you're creating value, will be very, very helpful as well. So Anthony, if I can ask you that quick question.
That is a great question. I don't know if I'm going to have a great answer, because I would say that's something that we struggle with as well. I think especially in the past few years with so much uncertainty, we've had to reinvent and rethink a lot of the budget process, and there's more questions than answers about what lies ahead. So I think that if you are not going to get away from a long budget process, because that is something that's really difficult to change without just forcing it, think of it a little bit more as scenario planning, which is a key way that we can partner with the business. And so through each step and through each iteration, it's just a new scenario and more refinement on what we think is lying ahead. And so taking a little bit more of the weight out of the entirety of the process perhaps can help drive it forward and get more out of it instead of the big budget process of the year. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Andrew, any recommendation from you or anything you see happening?
I'm a bit out of touch, to be honest, on that side of things these days. But from my experience going back, my observation from when I started in that job in TransPay, I always said that the biggest problem in finance, the biggest thing that should be sorted out is budgeting. It's the biggest pain in the butt in the whole calendar of finance. Adds the least value, has the most problems, causes the most hassle, etc. And so it staggers me that when we do finance transformations, we don't do anything on budgeting. We concentrate on offshoring and doing stuff with process efficiency and accounts payable and stuff like that. We should be tackling budgeting. Now, I would have loved to do a beyond budgeting kind of project, but I never got that opportunity. As a shortcut, one of the things I found helped in what I was doing was go top down. If you're having back and forth with political arguments, cut the whole thing short and say, what's the number you want, and we'll work back to it. That kind of cuts the whole thing down, saves a lot of hot air being wasted. I know that's controversial because a lot of people don't agree with that, but that's what worked for me.
Yeah, no, that's spot on there. I will add to that beyond budgeting in a bit. Gemma, what would your answer be, Gemma? What would you like to share with us?
So I'd say really focus on those big rocks, so the big drivers of your budget, and don't try and strive for perfection like Anthony said. I think, like you said, in uncertainty, it's about giving ranges, but actually understanding the sensitivities. So when you're doing those scenarios, is understanding which are the big sensitivities and levels of confidence.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Stephen?
Yeah, I suppose I just want to say everything that we've said in this last hour or so, hour and a half, because for me, whenever I've spoken to numerous companies now about this, I think it's about communication and collaboration. I know that's difficult, and often we stick in silos, and we have to. But I think I'm just going to pull it back to finance taking the lead, finance looking at where the problems are and where people are, having those issues, and challenging back. Not sitting and watching, but really taking an active interest in where it is. Again, everything everybody said is absolutely spot on here. I think, as I said, my slant on this presentation has always been to look at the supporting angle, making sure that we're focusing on the issues, not on the technology, which can be an inhibitor. But I absolutely agree that we need to just make sure everybody's speaking, everybody's heard, but that we remember what is the price that we're trying to get to at the end of, don't sweat the small stuff and all those sorts of things. But yeah, collaboration, moving out of the silo has to be something that I think will free up those continual backwards and forward budget nightmares that we have at quarter to 12 at night or whatever it is when we get around to it. So
yeah, no, absolutely spot on there, Stephen and everybody else. I mean, for me, it's continuous planning is the key thing. So to your point there, Andrew, beyond budgeting, the 80-20 rule there that Gemma mentioned, again, FP&A, so bringing the whole organization together, collaboration as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a great Q&A session. Just stay on the webcam. We have a few more slides to go through, and then we'll be ending in the next minute or so. So what is next for your diary? FP&A Trends webinar, they're talking about maximizing FP&A value through automation. So there you go, hand in hand again with what we've been talking so much earlier on. June 22nd for your diary. Great time to say thank you, first of all, to our technology sponsor, Venna, for making this possible, to our 4 panelists for the great insight, all the time and hard work they put into their presentation, and also for answering your questions. So thank you very much, panelists. And finally, of course, to our audience, our FP&A board members, for making the time to come and join us. Hopefully it's been very fruitful to yourself. And finally, leave you with a note here as to how you can link up with us and get in touch with us. This is the end of our webinar. Just before I close it, let me just quickly remind you that there's a feedback pop-up session that will come when I close it. Please spend 30 seconds, tell us how we did and what else you would like to hear from us in the future. So with this, I'd like to say thank you very much to everyone for attending. This now concludes our meeting for today. Hope to see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Have a great evening and goodbye. Nice to see you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.